Hey, you feel like learning? Guess what? I feel like teaching. Let's do this. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our channel, working on those foundational Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 skills. My name is Audrey Codner-Gibson from ACG Math Tutoring, and I want to congratulate you for keep going with this. And what we're actually going to do today, we're actually going to break it down. We're going to look at solving not just one step, but we're looking at two-step equations. So when we're looking at those two-step equations, we got to do those Common Core standards. And our Common Core standards today is ACED.1, AREI.1, and AREI.3. So we're going to look at last time's exit ticket. So what we did last time is those one-step equations. So remember, the ultimate goal for solving equations is we need to isolate the variable. So we have 3x is equal to negative 12. So we're going to divide both sides by 3. And the reason why I'm dividing, because if I look in between the coefficient and the variable, there isn't a plus or a minus sign. So that means it's multiplication. So the opposite or the inverse of multiplication is division. So now we have our x is equal to negative divided by a positive is negative, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. So my solution for number 1 should be negative 4. Looking at negative 2, we have n divided by negative 10 equals 6. So since it's division, we have to do the inverse of division, which is multiplication. So we're going to multiply both sides by whatever my denominator is. And in this case, it's a negative 10. So this negative 10 and this negative 10 is the same as me saying negative 10 divided by negative 10, which gives me 1. And what's left is n. So you can say 1n, or you can just say n, because both of them are equivalent. So now you have 6 times negative 10. So a positive multiplied by a negative gives me a negative, and then 6 times 10 gives me 60. So for number 3, we have that mixed number, that 1 1/2 x. So what we can do first is change that mixed number to an improper fraction. So as you recall, we take our denominator and multiply by the whole number, get an answer, and then take that answer and add to the numerator. So we have 2 times 1, which gives me 2, and 2 plus 1 gives me 3. And you put it over the original denominator, which is 2. So I have 3/2 x is equal to 6. So from here, for us to do it as like a one-step equation, we could either multiply by the reciprocal, or we can multiply by the denominator and then divide by what's left over. So if I multiply by the reciprocal, I'm going to have 2 over 3. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do it to the other. So I got my 2/3. So this 3 and this 3 are going to cancel out because 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. 2 divided by 2 also gives me 1. And 1 times x will give me just x. So now I have 6 times 2, which gives me 12. Because remember, we can make that 6 over 1, so we can make it into a fraction. And then 3 times 1 gives me 3. But 12/3, that can be reduced, which is the same as saying 12 divided by 3, which gives me 4. So I have a positive 4 for my answer for number 3. For number 4, we have negative 2x is equal to negative 40. So since I don't see a plus or a minus sign in between the negative 2 and the x, that means it's multiplication. So the inverse of multiplication is division. But instead of dividing by 2, I'm dividing by a negative 2. And then we have x is equal to a negative divided by a negative gives me a positive. And then 40 divided by 2 gives me 20. So if you got negative 4, negative 64, and 20 as your answers for last time's exit ticket, you're doing an awesome job. Keep it up. So for today, our learning target is, and this is what you should be saying to yourself, I can solve a two-step equation. So we almost did a two-step equation, if I may go back. like number 3. Number 3 really could have been a two-step equation, as I said before. So it's almost like I kind of introduced it a little bit to you. So we already looked at the exit ticket from last time. We're going to do some guided notes and some practice, and then we're also going to hit our exit ticket. So keep going one way. Here's the hints, and it's very similar to what we did for one-step equation. So remember, the goal is to isolate the variable to one side of the equal sign. It doesn't matter what side you put it on. It could be on the left, on the right. I know a lot of people prefer to have it on the left since we read from left to right, but either way, you're going to have that equivalency, which goes on regardless of what side the variable is on. Now you're going to perform the operation. So there's going to be times you got to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division in order to isolate that variable. You must have balance. Everything in life that you do, it always has some kind of balance. So whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other side of the equal sign. And most important, please be careful of those negative signs. So we have to worry about those properties of integers. So let's take a look at an example. Number 1, we have 3x minus 5 is equal to 16. So first thing I want to do, I want to isolate my variable. Right now, the x is with the 3, has a coefficient of 3. So they're together. So the very first step, I want to isolate that togetherness. So that means this negative 5 needs to go. So we always have to do the inverse. So if you have a minus 5, that means you're going to add 5. And whatever I do on one side, I do on the other. So negative 5 plus 5, that gives me 0. And we don't have to put the placeholder of 0. But we do need to take this 3x and bring it down. Also with the equals. So now we got 16 plus 5, which gives me 21. So now this should look familiar. 3x is equal to 21. That's what we did last time. So we want to isolate our x. So basically, x is going to stay right where it is. But the 3 has to go. If I notice between 3 and x, there isn't a plus or a minus sign, so that means it's multiplication. And the inverse of multiplication is division. So 3 divided by 3 gives me 1, or in this case, x. And then 21 divided by 3 gives me 7. So my solution for number 1 is going to be 7. If you want to check it, we're going to say 3, but in 7x, I'm going to put my 7 minus 5, and I want to see if that's going to equal to 16. So 3 times 7 gives me 21, and 21 minus 5 gives me 16. And is 16 equals 16 a true statement? Yes, it is. So that means that solution of 7 for x does work. So we look at number 2. We're going to do the same thing. We have 7x. Right now, that 7 is with x. So we have the plus 3. So we have to do the inverse of plus 3. So we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. So 3 minus 3 gives me 0, but we don't need the placeholder of 0, so we just kind of leave it. But we are going to bring down our 7x. So now I have a negative 25 minus 3. Both of the signs are the same, so that means my solution is also going to be negative. And I'm going to add the 25 and the 3, which gives me 28. So now I have 7x is equal to negative 28. So x is what I want to isolate. I want to keep the x, but that means I need to get rid of the 7. So since there's not a plus or a minus sign in between the 7 and the x, that means this is multiplication. And the inverse of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide both sides by the 7. 7 divided by 7 gives me 1x, or just x. A negative divided by a positive gives me negative. And then 28 divided by 7 gives me 4. So that negative 4 is the solution for x to make this into a true statement, which will have to be equivalent to negative 25. Okay? Hopefully you're getting this. So now we have x over 5 minus 6 is equal to 9. So first thing, the x is associated with this 5. So that's going to stay right where it is. We have this plus 6. We're going to add to both sides. So the 6's are going to cancel. Bring down my 7/5 is equal to, we got my 15. So now we got x/5. Remember, when you see it as a fraction, that's division. What's the inverse of division? Multiplication. So we're going to multiply both sides by my denominator, 5. So 5 divided by 5 gives me 1. And then you have your 15 times 5 gives you your 75. So you might be saying, well, why didn't we do the inverse of x/5? True. If I did the inverse of x/5, it'll still give me 5/x. But I don't want to cancel out the x's. Now, if it was like, say, 2/5, if there was a number in the numerator and a number in the denominator, doing the inverse or doing the opposite, the reciprocal, will actually work. But since x is on the numerator and that's what we're trying to isolate, it's going to be tough for us to do the reciprocal when our x is in the numerator, okay? If there's a number in the numerator, yes, use the reciprocal. If there's an x in the numerator, all you want to do is multiply both sides by whatever the denominator is, okay? So now for 4, we have -6x. They're together. If you want to think of it, it's almost like relationships. So then you have -6x plus 2. So plus 2 is the one that's trying to break up the relationship. So you need to exit them out of the relationship, right? So we're going to subtract 2 on both sides. So we want that person to go over to the other side. So now we have -28 minus 2, which gives me a -30. And then I bring down the -6x. So you're the x. You all of a sudden want to be by yourself. This relationship is not working. It's toxic. I need to divide that person out of my life. So you would divide -6. So -6 divided by -6 will give me 1, which is myself. And then a negative divided by a negative is positive, and then 30 divided by 6 will give me 5. So it's almost like, just like in life, there's so many inverses. You know, one thing and all of a sudden something else happens. So you always want to find the inverse. So whatever is attached to the x or the variable, you don't want to eliminate that first. You want to eliminate everything else first, okay? So let's get what a couple of practice problems. So we got -2m plus 9 is equal to 7. So if you want to pause to try to work these problems out, go right ahead. But I'm going to keep going so you know that you're doing it correctly, okay? So we have -2m. They're together. So they're going to stay together. That's you and your boo. Plus 9 is that extra person that's trying to break up the relationship. So we need to get rid of them. So in order to do that, we're going to subtract 9. So now we got -2m is equal to -2. So now we want to get m by itself. You know, your boo was messing up. Time to go. So I want to divide them out of my life. So I have my -2, my -2. They eliminate. Then I have my m is equal to a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So my solution for our number 1 is 1. So for number 2, what's different? The variable is not on the left-hand side. Do I need to move things around? You could, but you could solve this by just keeping x right where it is. So I have this 2x. That's going to stay right where it is. That means I'm not going to get rid of the 40. I'm actually going to get rid of the 10 because I need to even things out. I need that balance. So when I add 10, whatever I do on one side, I do on the other side. So -10 plus 10 cancels out, gives me 0, but I don't have to use it as a placeholder. But I do bring down the 2x. That's on the right-hand side of the equal sign. A -40 plus 10, that gives me -30. So now we're going into, I want to keep x right where it is. So this 2 needs to go. I look in between, there's no plus, there's no minus sign in between, so that's multiplication. So in order for me to solve, I have to do division. I need to divide them out of my life, okay? So 2 divided by 2 gives me 1, or 1x, or just x. And then negative 30 divided by positive 2 will give me a negative 15. So the solution of negative 15, once plugged in for x, should give you a solution of negative 40. Okay? So we have x over negative 3 minus 6 equals negative 10. You thought you were done. Ah! So again, if you need to pause, go ahead and pause and then give these a try. So for number 3, we're going to add 6. So I have x over negative 3. And then negative 10 plus 6. Since the 10 is negative, that's my largest value, so my answer is going to be negative. And since they're opposite, it will be 4. So remember, this is division. The inverse of division is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply whatever my denominator is. And in this case, it's a negative 3. So the negative 3 divided by negative 3 would give me 1, or in our case, 1x. And then a negative times a negative gives me positive, and 4 times 3 gives me 12. So for number 4, 7x plus 10 is equal to negative 2. So 7x, they're together. What's got to go? My 12. So since it's a positive 12, I'm going to do the inverse. I'm going to subtract 12. My 12s will cancel out because a positive plus a negative will give me 0. And I don't have to bring that down. I have my 7x is equal to negative 14. So I want to get x by itself. So I divide both sides by 7. So 7 divided by 7 gives me 1, or 1x. And then a negative divided by a positive is negative. 14 divided by 7 is 2. So x equals negative 2. All right, so I think we covered everything. We did some multiplication, we did some division, we did addition, we did subtraction, and we looked at multiple steps. So hopefully you can say, yes, I can solve two-step equations because we did a few examples. We did look at the exit ticket from last time. We did look at our guided notes. We did some practice. Now we're going to get with our exit ticket. So for this time, your exit ticket is 2 problems. 2x plus 1 is equal to negative 15. And x over 3 minus 7 is equal to negative 3. So do as best as you can with those 2 problems, submit it, and just like always, come back and check to see, did you get it right? Do I need more practice? What's going on? So again, if you like the videos, and I love doing them, so hopefully a lot of you guys are getting a lot out of it. The ones that do respond and the ones that are subscribed, thank you so much. You're awesome. But there's some people that are like, this is my first time seeing you. Well, guess what? If you want to see more of these, go ahead, hit the subscribe button. Go ahead, send me a message. Maybe there's something that you want to see that it might be on my list or it might not. But as always, it's always been a pleasure, and please keep going. I'm so proud of you.